And welcome to Football the Pod, Season 4, Episode 11. I'm your host, Commissioner Ben. It is the evening at least, where most of you are listening to this from, of Tuesday, November 11th. And yes, that's right, we are sticking to the high-intensity intro now as we head into the witching hour of the season, the fantasy season at least, because Week 10 is over. There are now only 4 regular season weeks left. And I must say, it was not the tightest of weeks in our league, with a whole bunch of blowouts, so not much clenching to be had. But we'll get to that. Because first, it is time, back with me again, for Just a Tip, with Commissioner Ben. All right, today's tip. We're sticking with trading because, the trade deadline is Saturday, November 22nd. So there's this week for trades and also next week leading up to next Saturday. So let's say 2 large weeks of opportunity to make some trades. And let's try and get some encouragement there. So let's talk about one other reason to trade, and that is schedules. We've got 4 weeks left of the regular season, like I just said. And then there's the 3 weeks of the fantasy playoffs. If you're fighting for the playoffs, you need to optimize for the next 4 weeks to make the playoffs, because otherwise, what's the point? I mean, I guess you could start fighting for the number 1 overall draft pick, but that's still in the final playoff weeks anyway. So you got to optimize. You want to make the playoffs. You need guys who are strong plays right now, and then you can figure out the playoffs. So if you're solidly in the playoffs, maybe you can sacrifice a couple losses to optimize for a better playoff schedule. It goes both ways. All right, let me give you a couple of examples. At wide receiver, Michael Pittman Jr. been a massive surprise. He was a top draft pick of mine who I early traded away, perhaps stupidly, but whatever. He's on bye this week, so he's not helping you this week. And then he's got a couple tough wide receiver matchups coming up after a pretty dud week this past week too. So he's probably not going to help you very much the next few weeks, but the playoff schedule is a lot lighter for him, so maybe he'll help you out once you get there. Another example is the so far pretty disappointing Justin Jefferson, supposedly star wide receiver on Minnesota, but has had terrible quarterbacks throwing him the ball. He's got another couple difficult matchups coming up in Green Bay and Seattle after an easy Chicago week this week, I should say. But then the fantasy playoffs start great with Dallas in week 15 and the New York Giants in week 16. So maybe you would want to, let's say, trade away Justin Jefferson or Michael Pittman for a guy who's going to help you more now to a team who can afford to have some bad players or bad scores at least until the fantasy playoffs. A couple of examples at running back. We've got James Cook, who should do well for the next few games, even though he had put up a complete dud in what should have been an amazing matchup against Miami this past week. But that was all of Buffalo. Okay, I digress. James Cook does have a pretty tough fantasy playoff schedule. But on the other hand, a guy like Chase Brown has some tough matchups coming up against Pittsburgh and New England, but then he's got a beautiful looking schedule for the fantasy playoffs. So go onto Yahoo, click on a player you're interested in or who's on your roster, look for the little red or green opponent colors in terms of the teams who they're playing against to see what Yahoo thinks are good or bad matchups, and maybe try to make some trades based on that, depending on what your need is. And that was just a tip with Commissioner Ben. All right, we are, of course, back with a guest, another first timer for season 4, and now fully established in our league after our legendary 2-team expansion of 2023. It is my pleasure to welcome back onto the pod, Brandon. Brandon, welcome. How's it going?
Thank you for having me. This is great. Happy to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Tell me about how your season has gone overall so far this year.
It's a little up and down, a little disappointing few weeks. I do have the second most amount of points, but the record doesn't quite show it. So would like a little bit more consistency from my team. The top half's very good, and then bottom half is a little scary. But overall, I can't be too upset.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't even notice that. You are second in total points, only second to me, that is. But yeah, you're not even far off. You're only 40 points off from me. I mean, you've actually had a pretty difficult points against record in terms of the top 7 teams. You have the second highest points against, so maybe that's been holding you back a bit. You're right. Yeah, inconsistent record, but definitely some big points scored. What was your strategy, and what has been your strategy in this third year of your time in the league?
It's hope and pray. I go into the draft every year and I'm like, everyone's going to go running backs or everyone's going to go wide receiver. So I'm going to do the opposite, being at the end of the draft. And every year, everyone does the exact opposite. So my plans go straight out the window and I just kind of roll with it. And then also, when I say hope and pray, literally was sitting right here doing the draft. And I remember going to pick a tight end and I saw Tyler Warren. I was like, do I really want a rookie? And I can't remember who I was going to pick. It was like a grizzled vet, and I was going to go, you know what? I'll go the safe route, and I didn't. I went for Tyler Warren, and he's a TE1, great year. So literally, hope and pray has gotten me this far.
Yeah, that is one pick that I regret a little bit. I did want Tyler Warren. I didn't think he'd get back to me. You made the great pick there, and yeah, that's probably been one of the best, the best picks of the draft, other than Puka Nacua. You have perhaps one of the top 5 picks overall of the draft in Puka Nacua. Yeah, great stuff. Maybe I guess your strategy is do well in the draft and then just reject every trade that gets offered to you. But all right, we'll get to that in a sec. Let's get on to fantasy. Speaking of trades, we had our 7th and 8th trade of the year this week. And of course, they both involved Mike, who's been in on all but one of the league trades this year. Nicely done. We'll start pulling up the stats next week to see if Mike can break a record for trades in the league. It was great to see these teams take advantage of Murph's trade recommendations, but let's see some more. We've still got a bunch more recommendations that can still be acted on. Only this week and next week remain for potential trades, like I said. But let's take a look at the trades we had this week first. All right, so I'm going to say them both back to back because first off, we had Michael Pittman being sent from Mike, originally from me, but now from Mike to Jason in exchange for Aaron Rodgers and Marvin Harrison Jr. This was Jason giving up one of these excess quarterbacks, but really just as a throw-in to go alongside this wide receiver for wide receiver trade. So that was Mike getting Aaron Rodgers and MHJ in exchange for Michael Pittman Jr. And then 1 hour later, Mike got Jackson Dart, a true starting fantasy quarterback, from Sarah in exchange for Jameson Williams, wide receiver, who's been disappointing so far on Detroit Lions, but he's really stepped it up the past 2 weeks. So back-to-back teams acting on this too many quarterbacks, try to dump them off for some better players. Especially Sarah really acting on that advice well and making some good progress fantasy-wise for her team at least. Brandon, what do you think of these two trades? Let me start with the first one.
So, I guess you're banking on Jacoby Brissett becoming a starting quarterback again and really carrying that team if you're going after Marvin Harrison Jr. I think it's risky. I like him, but maybe you bet on the upside. Maybe he has a great end to the season, but then you're giving up the consistency, the guarantee.
Yep. I mean, that one was interesting, right? Let's go to the early screen share here, and I don't even know what. I mean, you don't want to be starting Aaron Rodgers. This really, I can just throw Aaron Rodgers out of this. Let's look at just the Marvin Harrison for Michael Pittman here. Marvin Harrison has been disappointing, but the last 2 weeks with Jacoby Brissett as starter, he has gotten a ton of targets. All right, he's got back-to-back touchdowns. He had, you can't see it here. There we go. 10 targets last week, 12 targets this most recent week. He's been, a wide receiver 2 or better both times. And it looks like probably Kyler Murray was the problem. I mean, he's been really getting at least a ton of targets with him. Compare that to Michael Pittman. We know Michael Pittman started the year incredible. He was on bye, or he's going to be on bye this week. He's got, multiple almost 20-point games. Still 3 20-plus pointers in a row, but then this dud this past week against the worst matchup. So only 2 targets. It was an outlier bad game with only a couple of them. But here's that bad upcoming schedule I was talking about with bye and then the Chiefs and then Houston. So he's not expected to do so great in these next couple matchups. I don't really mind it. I say they're pretty even, Michael Pittman Jr. and Marvin Harrison Jr., both some junior guys, I guess, coming up. Do you have a winner for this trade?
I gotta go with fear boners.
You'd rather have Michael Pittman on your team?
Yeah, Danny Dimes got off to a great year. They're the number 1 team, so I would much rather put the trust there than in the Cardinals, who you never know what's going to happen over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, Yep. I like it. I'd say, they are roughly equal moving forward. Although I think I slightly like the upside more of Marvin Harrison Jr. as the younger guy, seeing if he can at least get some heavy targets to really see what they have in him more in year two. But we'll call that one a nice even trade. But really, the consequential one was Mike still needed to get a good quarterback to start, and then Sarah with two top 10 caliber fantasy quarterbacks, at least, in Matt Stafford and Jackson Dart, had to get rid of one of them. Offered up Jackson Dart, perhaps the more enticing rookie who's getting tons of rushing touchdowns to Mike in exchange for Jameson Williams, who's been a disappointment overall, but has really stepped it up these past couple weeks. Brandon, what do you think of this trade?
So yes, Jameson Williams has done well for a couple weeks, but the inconsistency is always going to be there. That if Jackson Dart doesn't come back, this is the fleece of the year. You got to think.
You're worried that Jackson
And
Dart, who went out with a concussion, might be done for the year.
yeah, what is it? 4 times he was looked at for concussions.
Yeah,
They've
this is his
already
fourth
run
now.
Scatabo into the ground. Like, do you really want to bring him back when you're not gonna, you're not gonna win? You're not gonna go to the playoffs. Is there a reason to bring him back when you could let him get healthy, have the off season? So if he doesn't come back, like, gee, Sarah's just laughing.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, it's always tough to get some value out of your extra quarterbacks because quarterbacks overall are pretty low value in our one quarterback league. But when you have top quarterbacks like that, they are definitely worth something. I think this was a fair trade, helped both teams to wins. In fact, I don't think Mike would have gotten the win without Jackson Dart this week. I totally agree with you. If Jackson Dart is done, then it will look more rough. But I think they're going to try and get him into games as much as possible. I mean, look at these stat lines in terms of rushing touchdowns. He's had a rushing touchdown all like what? This is like 6 out of the last 7 weeks with at least one rushing touchdown and like getting tons of rushing yards. It's what this is 5 out of 7 games with at least 50 rushing yards. Those are just going to guarantee you top fantasy numbers. So good trade overall, taking advantage of what you have enough of to make a swap for a player or for to upgrade your roster elsewhere. So great trade. And Brandon, I've got to ask you now, what would it take for you to make a trade? You always reject my offers so quick with no counters. I mean, hey, this is what you get for coming on the pod. Now you get to have some instant trade analysis. If we look at your team, let's go to your team here. All right. You are in need of some wide receivers. You are rolling with Puka Nacua, one of the top 3 wide receiver plays all year. No doubt there. Jordan Addison has been playable. So definitely a startable wide receiver 3. And then you got nothing after that. You've had Ricky Pearsall has been injured all year. Will he ever come back? Who knows? Tutu Atwell. I mean, no comment. And that's it. You need some wide receivers desperately. And you've got just a whole set of pretty decent running backs. Okay, Devon Achane, complete star. Jalen Warren has been a great RB2. Harvey seems to be picking it up, even though he hasn't gotten much actual time. He's still gotten some touchdowns, some receiving work lately. And Tajay Spears is going to be picking it up lately. Even Kenneth Gainwell is a good sub-in. He's your great handcuff to Jalen Warren, so you got that covered. I mean, you got a bunch of good wide receivers. I mean, a bunch of good running backs. You need a wide receiver. I've got a bunch of good wide receivers. I need running backs. Can we make a trade happen, Brandon?
See, I like my players, though. I get very emotionally attached to all of my players. I feel like they're my children. I don't want to just let one go. But my issue is like Ricky Pearsall. If he came back, we're looking a little bit better. I thought Joe Mixon, he would come back at some point. Now I think he's just never going to play. So
Oh,
if I had
he's
those
never
two
going to
in the
play. That's
lineup,
right. Yeah.
then it does change everything with my team. So I'm a little afraid to get rid of one of those running backs, knowing each week after Achane, it kind of can be hit and miss with everything. But in saying that, I do need to make a move considering my Tutu Atwell pickup, which I thought was going to be the steal of the year. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. Everyone's sleeping on him. And then he goes straight onto the IR after I spend a ton of fab money on him. So I'm not perfect.
All
I'll
right.
admit that.
The Tutu Atwell pickup. What were you thinking? Everyone's just rushing into the waiver wire trying to pick up Tutu Atwell. They're like, oh man, everybody sees this. This guy's about to break out. I got to dump $30 on him.
I literally was like, there's going to be someone else that read the same article and is going to go, he's the sneaky pickup. So I got to go big and I got to get him. And no one else even knew who he was, or everyone else was just smarter than me and was like, that's the dumbest pickup I've ever seen. So kudos to everyone else in the league for not going after him. He's just a waste of space.
I don't know what article you read, but you know what? You went big and you got him, so it was a success. Now he's supporting the rest of your team on the IR. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into it. You think about this if you want. If there are any trades you're thinking of making now, if we once we get a scan of all the matchups this week, this leads us into our main segment, the weekend review. And well, we'll start off with the low score. As you can see here, if you're watching the video version, fittingly, the biggest clenched buttholes this week were those competing for the Poopy Football Award. It was real tight, with the Big Poop seemingly destined to remain in the handsome boy Fearboner household. But instead it was Sean, who remained barely a point behind Jason, finishing just under 85 points to take down the Poopy Football Award. Congratulations, Sean. I'm sure that extra $10 will go a long way on top of the $100 that you still had in terms of fat money. All right. And for the high score, in a week with two dominant scores, the overall trophy battle was actually close. But Nick's Jahmyr Gibbs-led balanced attack was enough to overcome Jonathan Taylor on Scott's side, as Nick earns his second Champ of the Week trophy with 179 points. Congratulations. And let's move on. We are sharing the screen. Let's get into the matchup breakdown. We'll go through our matchups on video and audio as always now, so follow along whatever way you prefer. And to start it off, we will once again start at the top of my screen. And that was the battle between the number 1 and number 2 overall teams, myself against Daniel. And well, as you can see here, I was first, Daniel was second. It has remained that way. I am still in first, and Daniel is still in second. But now there is a larger gap between us because I won this matchup 131 to 108. Yes, I was the victor. That's all I will say there. This was, never really in doubt. I did not have to clench at all after Thursday night was over because Daniel already had 3 guys playing on Thursday night. J.K. Dobbins was actually the best player because Brock Bowers, who should be one of his top players, just fell completely flat. So I was lucky to run in a game where Brock Bowers did basically nothing. Ashton Genty still had a touchdown, but he had sort of just a baseline game. And so getting like 27 points from 3 pretty important players overall, that made me relax pretty easy going into the weekend. And then there was really no standouts other than Chris Olave. Chris Olave has been fantastic all year. He's a top 10 wide receiver. He's been a great pick, still managing to get all the targets. I think my internet connection dropped for a second there. That's all right. Getting all the targets on New Orleans. But on my side, I will just say, Brandon, take a look at all my wide receivers. I got touchdown heavy Drake London. I've got dominant rookie Emeka Egbuka. I've got Quentin Johnston, who didn't get a touchdown this week, but had 12 targets somehow, 5 for 42. He could have had a much bigger game. Okay, 10 targets. 10 targets, 5 for 42. He's getting back to a top wide receiver in the offense. Juwan Jennings had a touchdown. Let's go to my bench. I had Parker Washington with a touchdown as well. All of my wide receivers are just popping off. One of them is for your taking if you can get me a running back. Even though I've got Woody Marks now doing well, Kenneth Walker is just going to get 8 points every week. So ideally, he goes on my bench and I get a better running back. Even though I've got Chase Brown and Jamar Chase coming back, my team's awesome. That's all I'll say with this matchup here. All right, great matchup, Daniel. Maybe you want to come on the pod and talk about it one day. Let's move on to our second matchup of the week, where we had the Kittle Titty Committee. That would be Mike's team taking on Crashy Rice, who was the namesake, at least, was out this week after missing the first 6 weeks. It was time for Rashee Rice and the Chiefs to finally be on bye, which really helped Mike out. In addition to the Jackson Dart trade, he was able to start Jackson Dart, leading him to a 149 to 130 victory. So Mike still fighting with all these trades. He can still push into the playoffs. Don't give up yet. Can still get those points for entrance as well. And what a trade. Look at this. Jackson Dart with over 26 points was the best player on his roster. That's why you make trades like this even better than Drake May on Eddie's side, even though, Drake May is now the betting favorite to win NFL MVP in terms of, real life stats. Passing to Stephon Diggs with that New England stack, which has been working out real well. Stephon Diggs is not getting massive target share, but he is getting those touchdowns. And now the triple stack for Eddie with Travion Henderson perhaps finally breaking out. It took an injury to their fourth running back, Terrell Jennings, to be able to get some more run for Travion Henderson, but he had two massive runs of over 50 yards. Perhaps they will finally give him the ball more. I kind of doubt it when Ramondre Stevenson comes back. It'll go back to a timeshare, but at least he's gotten some trust to get the ball a little bit more. As CMC, Christian McCaffrey has actually been a terrible runner this year. He's been incredible for fantasy, but his rushing stats have not been good. He's just a full-time wide receiver with who runs the ball a bit. And so still getting at the stats, no touchdown this week, which is really what Eddie needed, because then, starting two tight ends is fine as long as they don't suck. Mason Taylor, there is no better option than Mason Taylor. Come on. What are you doing playing Mason Taylor when you already are playing Oronde Gadsden? I know you're holding on your bench like a bunch of stinkers, but you don't have to hold all these backup running backs. There could have been a better wide receiver on the waiver wire at least to play, so you don't have to play Mason Taylor. Oh, man. All right. And I think Kendrick Bourne's time has come and gone as well. On Mike's side, a whole bunch of trades. He got traded onto his team. Justin Jefferson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Aaron Jones. All of these guys were not on his team originally. Romeo Doubs. Romeo Doubs shit the bed this week. But George Kittle is really the game changer here. If he can come out and be the number one or two target on San Francisco, then Mike does have a chance to put up some big games the rest of the year, including Alvin Kamara maybe finally having a good week, and see if he can move that forward. Hey, if you want to make another trade, Mike, I'm here for you. We can keep making something happen moving forward. Why not? Let's have you break the trade record. All right, good week for both teams roughly overall, but Eddie needed Rashee Rice in order to be able to win this one. Let's move on to our third matchup of the week, where we had Brent's team, those Golden Chubs, taking on you, Brandon, and it really wasn't much of a battle with another clean victory, this time 131-102 for you. What'd you think of your matchup this week? How did this one go down?
Hey, like I told you on Sunday, I was not confident at all with this team. And I was going in thinking it's going to be a lot closer than it was. Thankfully, got the win. But when you look at my team, and I had 3 position players all score 12 points combined, and a kicker putting up 0, I was very afraid, but did get very lucky with AJ Brown and Jordan Love getting stuck in the defensive game of the year, which was, some people might have enjoyed last night's game. I had to turn it off. That was pretty painful. 0 offense, and you can show it on the board with both Love and Brown putting up no points.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't even realize that. You don't actually notice how tight this matchup could have been by looking at the score, because Brent had so much running on Monday Night Football, Green Bay against Philly. His starting quarterback, Jordan Love, his supposed top wide receiver, A.J. Brown, and his tight end, Dallas Goedert, who did the best of all 3 of them. Dallas Goedert with 8 points was better than Jordan Love and better than A.J. Brown. So Brent only managed to get like 15 points combined from those 3 players. If those had been 45 points, which is totally doable, that would have been a win for him. But somehow they all just did not show up. A.J. Brown specifically has been such a disappointment. He has 2 games this year over 20 points. He's got another game with 14. The rest have all been under 10. And he's got even 2 games. He's got 3 games this year with under 4 points, which is just completely bust category. He has just been a complete disappointment overall. I would say you can trade him, but I don't even know if I would want to trade for him. Parker Washington's been more consistent than him. I guess I'll give you Parker Washington for him, Brent. Yeah, not much to say here. Good win for you. Fantasy, I will say, like I've said many times, is often won and lost by your stud players. And Devon Achane and Puka Nacua are two guys each week that can give you stud performances. If it's not Puka, then it is Devon Achane. And this week it was Achane ripping off 40 points for you, leading you to that victory, getting you through this week of just RJ Harvey, Darnell Washington, and your kicker doing absolutely nothing. Let's move on to our fourth matchup where we had Jason against Nick, and in a blowout of blowouts in terms of blowout weeks, this one was just an absolute blowout, earning us the blowout of the week as Nick absolutely demolished Jason 179-86 for a ridiculous 93-point victory. Brandon, what do you have to say about this one?
Like, the only consolation is that you're like, Jason was never going to win. So at least you got absolutely dummied. So it makes you feel a little bit better that even if your team put up 130 points, 140 points, then you would be a little upset. But at least you can go, well, you're never going to win anyway. So wipe your hands of it. But what are you supposed to do? 179 points? It's almost not fair.
Yep. Yeah. I agree there. I mean, Nick ended up making the right starting quarterback decision finally. That was didn't have bye weeks to force on him. Sat Daniel Jones playing in Berlin, and that was the right call because Baker scored twice as many points, almost 30 points for Baker. And just the consistency was what won it. I mean, Nick had the stud players, Jahmyr Gibbs, 38 points, Kyron Williams back to a 2 rushing touchdown day, even though he didn't have many yards, and he is ceding work to Blake Corum. I know you want Blake Corum on your roster, Nick. Send me a trade offer. All right. Only Kyle Pitts and his kicker had less than 10 points. Otherwise, nice consistency there with this top games, and that's how you rip off massive weeks, getting your stud almost 40-point plays alongside consistency. And on Jason's side, his top player, Lad McConkey, James Cook, who's been carrying him all week, just did nothing. Quarterback, nothing. Everybody was bad, including all the players he recently traded for. Cortland Sutton, Tyrone Tracy, and Michael Pittman. Recent trade acquisitions from Jason combined for like 16 points. You need more from that from your trades. But hey, trades are still open. We can make some more trades before the season ends. Let's move on to our fifth matchup. And well, we have the other member of this handsome, fear-boning household in Cassie against Scott. And as was the theme in this home this week, both members of the household got completely destroyed. This one slightly less bad, but still absolute destruction as Scott, well, ran over Cassie completely, 174-89. Brandon, what do you think about this one?
Again, you kind of like, well, you were never going to win. So just you kind of forget about it. But how does a guy put up 0.01 points? Like Jerome Ford, last year, he was so good. But how does that happen?
That's a great, look at Jerome Ford's line. He had 1 rush for 1 yard and 1 target that he didn't catch for 0.1 points. That is hilarious.
I feel like if you have a player score under 1 point that is a starter, that's just bad luck. It shouldn't be on you. It shouldn't be on you as a fantasy manager.
I would argue, what do you do in playing Jerome Ford? You would definitely, you got to play Theo Johnson or something over you. I guess Cassie does not have running backs. I guess that is the problem with Tony Pollard on bye. But yeah, not much to say here. Cassie is not using her well-earned last place fab dollars very well. I will leave it at that, even with Darius Slayton coming up bigger. And starting Jacoby Brissett for a totally reasonable fantasy week, all of her positional players are just falling completely flat. Where on the other side of things, Scott, who called himself out of the running for the league, has Jonathan Taylor, which means he is probably the most likely to win because Jonathan Taylor has been the number 1 fantasy player overall now with a completely dominant 48-point performance, 3 rushing touchdowns again. He has had multiple weeks with 3 touchdowns, 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks with 3 rushing touchdowns already. That's just rushing touchdowns. He's had another week with a receiving touchdown to add on to 2 rushing touchdowns. So he's had 5 weeks with 3 touchdowns. That's just absolutely ridiculous. It doesn't even matter who else you're playing. When you have that baseline, him plus Trey McBride are all of Scott's team. The rest, doesn't even matter who else he plays. They're all bad, and he can keep winning. So this may be one of the teams to beat right now just because of Jonathan Taylor. Let's move on to our 6th matchup of the week, where we have Sean against Sarah. And well, Sarah's score was not massive, but this was still a super easy 133 to 85 point victory for her, as she is led by Matthew Stafford. You know, she was going back and forth to me like, oh, what quarterback should I trade, Matthew Stafford or Jackson Dart? I'm like, oh, I don't know. Jackson Dart's maybe more attractive to sell, so you could sell him. They're both equal. They're both great fantasy plays. So whoever you want to trade, get rid of them. She kept Matthew Stafford. She made the right call because Matthew Stafford still did even better than Jackson Dart on the back of 4 passing touchdowns yet again. Let's look at Matthew Stafford's stat line. In the past 3 weeks, there was a bye in there, so 4 weeks. He's had 4 touchdowns, and 5 passing touchdowns. Just absolutely unbelievable. He is one of the favorites for MVP after perhaps not even worried about the season if he may have been injured. All this talk about having a bad back, no, he's totally fine, and he is absolutely destroying. And that as well, one of the reasons why Puka Nacua is doing absolutely amazing as well. And then Sarah's second best player was recently acquired Jameson Williams, who she gave up Jackson Dart for. He was her top non-quarterback scorer. So just an overall fantastic week for Sarah in terms of roster management. The rest of the roster was a little bit weak, but Troy Franklin with a 15-point performance looks like he has overtaken Courtland Sutton perhaps as the number 1 wide receiver on Denver. So he is now looking like a weekly start. Sarah still needs some help in terms of positional depth, but the roster is looking a lot stronger now with Matt Stafford and Jameson Williams. On the other side of things with Sean's team, I mean, this matchup was pretty much over from the get-go as well when you're starting Bo Nix at quarterback and he cannot even break 8 points. Jackson Smith and Jigma continues to just dominate, even in a game when Sam Darnold only dropped back to throw the ball 13 times. 5 of those were still receptions to JSN for 93 yards and a touchdown. But after that, I mean, there is just no star players stepping up on Sean's roster. Breece Hall looks like a great play, but when you're playing Hunter Henry and TJ Hawkinson, 2 completely mediocre tight ends, and you have to play Bayshell Tootin, I mean, Bayshell Tootin is not somebody you want to start, but I mean, Sean did have George Pickens on bye. He's got Ramondre Stevenson injured, but Sean is definitely somebody who could look to make a move as well because his roster has some strong pieces, but I don't think it is a championship level roster at least with Bijan Robinson just playing somewhat mediocre as well. Bijan Robinson has been great overall, but he's been a bit of a disappointment the past couple of weeks with only 1 week of the past 4 where he's broken 20 points. Let's move on to our last matchup. And finally, in this matchup, which was Christine against Aaron, we get our only close one of the week, the tight butthole matchup of the week, with Christine eking out a 129 to 121 victory. Brandon, what do you think of this one?
This one's all on Aaron. Look at his bench. Look at what he left on his bench there.
I have not even taken a look at Aaron's bench. Wow, yeah. All right. Aaron's got Tez Johnson with 20 points on his bench. Tyler Algier with 17 points on his bench. That's 4 touchdowns that he left on his bench. Yeah, good call. Yep.
And then how do you leave Garrett Wilson in your starting roster knowing that he wasn't going to play?
No. Garrett Wilson played. He played.
Oh, he did? I thought he was out.
Yeah, he got no points because he came in, he had 3 targets, and then he got hurt. So he did have, the ball was thrown to him a few times. He started. Yeah. So I give him that. He can't, I mean, maybe you should never just be starting your Jets either way. But yeah, he got 3 targets. Now he's out for 3 to 4 weeks. So Aaron's probably in need of some wide receivers now, unless I guess he could start Tez Johnson sitting on his bench.
If he swapped those 2 out, he's laughing for anyone at the bottom. If he takes his flex players, swaps those, he's laughing all the way to the bank. So, a little unfortunate for him, but, brought it on himself.
That's true. That's true. I did not even notice that. That's great analysis, and it was carried by his Chargers defense as well. I mean, it's always a bit sketchy when your defense is one of your top plays. I mean, and on Chris, it's not like Christine did all that much. Her top player, Caleb Williams, who's now turned into a great fantasy quarterback, and nobody else broke 20 points. Solid from Jalen Waddle. Somehow a solid game from Keon Coleman. Kyle Monangai fell back to the earth with DeAndre Swift back now as a starting running back on Chicago, just 9 points from Monangai. And yeah, I mean, nothing too exceptional on Christine's side, although she was without Travis Kelce and T. Higgins. So better days are ahead for her as well. Like we always say, the trade options are out there for anyone looking to upgrade their roster moving forward. And that closes things out. That's the Week 10 wrap. There are only 2 teams on bye this week, the Colts and the Saints. So really only Scott is affected, but maybe some of you are relying on other Colts and Saints. Brandon, who is your number 1 waiver ad this week? Our league is real tight. It is hard to find players available. So if we look at all the available players here, who is just your number 1 ad at any position? Who would you want on your roster this week to make an impact?
So I was kind of flip-flopping between, like, personally, because I need a tight end for this week, so I was leaning Dawson Knox, but then you can never trust Josh Allen where he's going to throw the ball. He could put up 400 yards of passing and spread it out to 8 wide receivers. So you never know. I'm going to go a little off the board with Tyler Lockett.
Interesting. Yeah.
Raiders have no one other than Brock Bowers, so he could have a big week. I'm going to say I'm putting some money on him this week.
I like that call. I think Tyler Lockett is the best wide receiver available, at least for this week. They're playing Dallas. You can pass the ball on Dallas. They tend to be involved in big games. And he got 6 targets this week after just being let go and then picked up by Vegas. It was his best game of the year, 5 for 44, led the team in targets. Maybe they keep feeding him the ball and at least there'll be opportunities. So I like him as a pick up and play if you need a wide receiver this week in our, very empty waivers that we do have. And with that, I will say, I'm looking at Dawson Knox as well. I did add Luke Musgrave in advance because I saw that Dalton Kincaid went out. So I probably won't add Dawson Knox, but we'll see. I do like him as a top tight end ad this week, and that is if Dalton Kincaid is injured. But with that, we're done. Week 10 is over. There are 4 weeks left. Get those points to get into the playoffs. Brandon, thank you so much for coming onto the pod. It was a pleasure having you. Any final words?
Good luck. I will send you a trade request at some point today.
Wow. I'll believe it when I see it. All right?
It may or may not come with a side of please let me have this, or what can I do? Maybe I can slide some money under the table next time I see you to get this through, but kidding. We'll see. I will try to force myself to give up somebody.
All right. Yeah. Well, hey, the trade-off, I think we are a perfect trade match, as you saw from this roster comparison. I got the wide receivers. You got the running backs. I need running backs, sort of. You really need wide receivers. There's something to happen there. We'll see. Let's see. I will let the league know if you at least send a trade offer. If I think it's really bad, I won't tell the league, but I'll just say you did make an offer at least. So I'll hold you to that word. Let's see you get some action in the app and make some trade offers, and let's go watch the Leafs game. I will be headed to whatever the center is called, where the Canucks play, going to see the Canucks against the Jets tonight. First hockey game. And I will watch the Leafs in the bar beforehand. So until next week, thank you everybody for listening. Good luck, everyone, and have a great week.